Buck, I'm looking at a lot of this stuff. We were just talking about it off air. Joe Biden, who had never done anything in business, who had been a politician for over 40 years, was vice president of the United States until late January of 2017. On his federal tax return in 2017, Buck, he reported income of over $11 million. Joe Biden, $1 million a month this dude was making because he was on his federal salary in January. So between February and December of 2017, he made over $11 million according to his federal tax return. And this is from the Daily Mail. 5.2 million of that, they can't really figure out where it came from. Of the overall, I think he made 16 million the next couple of years total. But I look at that number, Buck. This is not a guy who owned a business. This is not a guy who is used to being able to produce income on that level. And suddenly a spigot of cash came pouring in. Where did that money come from? I think there's a legitimate investigation that should ensue because, Buck, what I think happened is, I think when Donald Trump got elected, Joe Biden thought his political career was over. And he just turned to Hunter Biden and he said, let's get rich. And Hunter Biden, drug addict, somehow turned on the money spigot, and it all came pouring in.
Of virtue or
He's not
judgment,
Warren
I
Buffett.
think we could say.
Yes. He's not Warren Buffett. It's not like Hunter Biden said, okay, Pops, give me, your $500,000 in life savings, and we can turn that into a massive amount of money just based on my investing acumen. This was shady. There is almost no way to justify it. And this is just what's being reported in the tax returns because we know that Hunter Biden is under investigation for not paying his fair share of taxes.
I know that this is something that we say, and I always want to come at this with fresh ideas and new analysis, but sometimes you do have to just sort of hammer the point. You've made this before, Clay. I've made this before. If Donald Trump had a wayward crack addict son who was dancing around in his tighty whities, impregnating random strippers, denying paternity from them, doing shady business deals with Chinese businessmen and Ukrainian oligarchs, Ukrainian corrupt energy companies, while his dad is running U.S. foreign policy in Ukraine. It's important everyone understands that. Joe Biden was Obama's point man in Ukraine. That's why he fired Victor Shokin, the prosecutor, bragged about it at a meeting at the Council on Foreign Relations. This is all over. The media, this would be constant meltdown mode. We'd be saying that the president, they'd be saying the Trump presidency, they said it anyway, but what was bought through these shady schemes. They'd be saying that you can't trust anything this president does. He's been paid off. And with Hunter Biden, what is really the explanation? Just, it's not that interesting? It's actually fascinating. I disagree with their it's not interesting line.
Yeah, that was the claim that the Atlantic writer, I think.
Applebaum from the Atlantic,
yes.
Does the president still maintain that he never spoke with his son about his business dealings? And given this reporting on Eric Schwerin, does he also say that he has never spoken to his son's business partners about his son's business dealings?
He maintains his same statements that he's made in the past. I would say I know you're referring to Waves records that were released more than 10 years ago. I really don't have more detail or information on them. I'd note that there was a gap when Waves records were not released, but I don't have more information about visits from more than 10 years ago.
I don't have information about visits from 10 years ago. Welcome back to Clay and Buck. Well, we're going to try to track down that information for you. We're curious to know what exactly was going on here because you got millions and millions of dollars flowing into Joe Biden's LLCs and into Jill Biden's various businesses. Dr. Jill Biden. Clay is
I'm just fired up about this, Buck, because I assume that a lot of listeners out there are thinking through this too. It's really hard to make $11 million in a year when you don't have anything other than your own labor to sell, right? It's not as if Joe Biden is Taylor Swift or a NBA or NHL or NFL player where he's making millions of dollars in income off of his direct labor. So when I see, especially because he worked till the end of January, when I see that he reported over $11 million in income in 2017, Buck, $1 million a month, that's really, really hard to do in an ethical and legal way.
Can I just also point out that the Clintons they masterminded this whole program of creating a charity that was really a pass-through for access payments to the Clintons, right? That's why they had the Clinton Global Initiative. If anyone wants to disagree with that characterization, they'd have to explain why when Hillary loses in 2016, they have to shut down the Clinton Global Initiative basically right away. All of a sudden, Saudi Arabia wasn't so interested in writing checks to, quote, charity, but also all their private jet travel for the Clintons paid out of the foundation. I mean, this has become a much more common thing across the board. People using and abusing foundations that are ostensibly for a good purpose for private need to cover their expenses, their travel, etc. But the Clintons, Clay, $100 million.
Yeah.
Bill and Hillary Clinton somehow made $100 million giving speeches and having books ghostwritten for them. No one's even buying these books. So they really set the standard, and I think Joe Biden felt like, hey, man, Biden family business, time to turn on the spigots. And he let Hunter Biden be the point man. I mean, think about this guy's judgment, everybody. I wouldn't trust Hunter Biden with $5 to go buy me a latte.
Well, I said last week, I think, I wouldn't, if I owned a gas station, there's a 0% chance that I would hire Joe Biden to run it. And if I owned a gas station and Hunter Biden wanted to be an employee, I'd expect that he would steal from me.